And we are live. I'm Justin Lomness. I'm the Lunatic Libertarian, running the second live stream of the evening. I am here with Chris By. My boxing mind has not left me, for the heavyweight champ of the world previously. Chris By, Libertarian candidate for the entire state of Alaska, rocking and rolling with the Lunatic Libertarian. How you doing, Chris?
Buddy, I am fantastic. We just did a little bit of campaigning this morning at a local pot shop, which I'm currently standing in front of. Good titrations. It's been good. We're still pretty far behind, right? Because we're running as a libertarian, and so I've got to convince a lot of Democrats and former Republicans to vote for me. But I think we're going to do all right. I'm optimistic.
Hey, man, I think anybody that is running as a libertarian has the idea that human beings are the core of the issue and that everything else is a byproduct of that. I think that specifics of all of what politics is right now is to the wayside. Human beings need security. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. You know what we're finding? What we're finding, man, is that typical Alaskans, and I bet this is nationwide, but typical Alaskans are just fed up with a two-party system, and they're looking for somebody with some normalcy, right? Somebody who can see balance and not pull the wrecking ball further to the left or further to the right and let it swing down amongst us people. And there are days where I'm a little down, right? Like when I find out how all my opponents with the money they've got and this and that. But then you're out amongst the people, and I'm telling you, man, they're just hungry. They're hungry for libertarian economics, libertarian policies, and libertarian thought, where freedom and liberty has a higher value than party consensus. And it's just been amazing. It truly has. It's uplifting every day.
Absolutely. I just got some awesome business cards from Kelsey Lyons Designs, and I handed them out today, and people were like, holy shit, this exists? I said, yeah. And I was like, check me out. I'm going to be live twice tonight. Just check me out. Listen to what the people have to actually say. And I live in a small town of 3,000 in Wisconsin. As far as Alaska, as far as I understand, there are very few densely populated areas. So trying to get the word out to people, it has to be exponentially hard.
Yeah, so if you were to look at Alaska in general, we basically have three populations. We've got folks that live on the road network, and that would include Fairbanks, Wasilla, Anchorage, Soldotna, Seward, Glen Allen, Delta Junction. Those are pretty much probably 65% of the population live on the road network. And then you've got the poor guys that live in the banana belt of Alaska, right? So that would be like Kodiak, Juneau, the capital of Alaska, Ketchikan, and Haines and Sitka. And their temperatures never really get below probably 80 degrees. I'm just kidding. They get to about maybe 20 degrees. And then we have the people that live what we call the bush. And those are people that live off the road network and are only accessible by either boating down the Yukon River or the Kuskokwim River, or flying into those locations. And they're fairly remote and they're really hard to reach. But, you know, and I won't lie, we've been blessed. We've had the ability to really get after some of those people, because a lot of them want to be cut off from the thread of federal government and go back to more of a self-reliant lifestyle. And it's been resonating. I'm still up against a lot of federal money, right? And as a libertarian, would rather see that federal money come back to us as a tax break, if no taxes at all, right?
Correct.
So it's a challenge, but you know, you got to try. You can't sit on the sideline anymore and complain. That's just not good enough. So we're giving it a whirl.
That's exactly why I started this podcast, and I am a very young libertarian. the ideology's been there for several years, but to actually put it into politics and policy as far as public policy, I mean, I think libertarians as an overall party have it correct. The policy is don't take anybody's stuff, don't harm anybody, and mutually agree to self-survival, I would say. Just interact with everybody so that you're not harming anybody, and there's a mutual benefit, the quid pro quo kind of thing. You leave me alone, I'll leave you alone. And in Alaska, I'm sure that's why people come out to your state all the time, is to be left alone. They want their seclusive lifestyle so that they don't have to actually be bothered with all the troubles that society wants to bring upon them.
That's really true. What we're experiencing right now, who are, I'm still here, right? Yeah, we're getting lots of folks who are they're just plain tired. Like they're just tired. And it's creating voter apathy. And we're trying to bypass some of that. But it's a long row. I won't lie. It's not an easy row. We're asking people to go outside their traditional pathways to vote for us. And anytime you ask people to be brave, you have to come up alongside them with encouraging and friendly, polite, kind words to encourage them further to actually vote and follow through with that vote, right? And it's a tough row. I won't lie, it's a tough row. We don't have very much advertising. It's all basically word of mouth. Obviously, we've got our Facebook and we've got our website, right? Our website is itstimealaska.com. But it's a challenge. And I would encourage you in your town of 3,000. So I'm in Fairbanks. There's about, 80,000 of us in the immediate area. It's a challenge to really get after those individuals and really seal the deal. So what we're doing is it's all been word of mouth, and I've got a little army of people who get on websites and champion, Chris By for Congress. But it's really been a grassroots thing. It's actually been pretty cool.
So that's timeforalaska.com?
That's right. It's timealaska.com.
Let's say that one more time for me. My
Sure.
diesel ear doesn't hear you.
Sure. It's timealaska.com. So when we started, I was the only candidate running against a guy named Don Young. We'd been there since Richard Nixon was the president. Literally was there when Richard Nixon declared he wasn't a crook. Well, that gentleman passed away here about a month and some change ago, and the race got really complex. I'm running against a guy named Santa Claus. So, I hope I don't have to debate that guy. That dude gives stuff away for free. So that's going to be kind of a challenge. But I think we'll put our best foot forward, and it's been pretty well received on the road network. Next week, I branch out a little bit. I'm going to hit Sitka and Juneau. Next month, I'll hit Juneau and Sitka. And then I'll hit Kodiak immediately following that. And then I'll come back to Anchorage and Fairbanks and really champion hard in those two areas.
Well, to anybody that Santa Claus is bringing a gift to, you're going to pay for it in one form or another. Just remember that.
Very true. Very true.
Do you think that Alaska is one of the last frontiers? I know that as far as the lower 48 or the mainlanders would say, is that, Alaska is a gold mine, literally. Yeah, we've lost the video feed for you, Chris. I'm sorry, but I don't know a way of correcting it. I've tried to exit out and stuff like that, but we just lost a little bit of your video. That's fine. We'll have audio. We're still live. And
okay, cool. Cool.
Do you think Alaska is the last frontier of because I would assume that the libertarian perspective is ingrained into Alaskan citizens just from the simple fact of the way they live. Am I wrong in that perspective?
Yeah, unfortunately, you are. And there's a couple real key pieces to that puzzle. Number one, the federal government is the largest landowner in Alaska, and not by a little bit, but like a long shot. So because of that, we have a lot of federal employees up here and a lot of retirees. I'm one of them. And so a lot of federal money is used to make the roads. A lot of federal money is used to make infrastructure happen around here. Not because it can't be done on our own 2 feet, but because the federal government owns so much of our property, we don't have the ability to expand opportunities out in order to make our own roads. So that's one of them. The second, there's a substantial native population. They all receive unique funding from the federal government that was written in law by both John Young and by a guy named Ted Stevens. And it basically gives these corporations, these native corporations, the ability to do first bid on any government contract anywhere. So when I was in Afghanistan, there was a company called Chugach, who's actually a native corporation here in Alaska that owned the contract for some contract in Afghanistan, and it would be true for any other federal contract. And so that
Mm-hmm.
there's more money that's basically leaves your pocket there in Wisconsin or Pensacola or San Antonio, Texas, and it arrives here in Fairbanks, Alaska, or Anchorage, Alaska. And then the third piece I would say is the the lifestyle that people wish to live in Alaska is extremely expensive. I mean, right now, heating oil back in October was $2.12 a gallon. Yesterday, I paid $4.37 a gallon for heating oil, and pretty much everybody in Alaska uses heating oil.
I
Um,
use heating oil here in Wisconsin. I'm not. I think our heating oil was somewhere. It's probably even more expensive here in Wisconsin. So you see that it was like $4.80 a gallon.
mm,
And my tank is, I think, 275 gallons. So when people compute that it is not a 3 month expense. It's not a 2 month expense. Some people, depending on how their housing situations are, spend that every month.
yeah, exactly. And so so while we don't necessarily get federal funding from that, what we do actually get is federal defunding for that, because we can't extract more natural resources in a safe manner here in Alaska without going to the federal government and asking Mother May I. And so we could be down that price, but because of federal regulations and authority that they've taken themselves, we do not have the ability to bring that price down in Alaska. And so the price just keeps going up and up and up. And it's true in your state as it is anywhere else. So it's really frustrating. But I think we're going to win this because we're going to be able to pin it not just on a party, but both parties, because both parties were at the table for the $30 trillion of debt. Both parties are stonewalling us for the management of Alaska land. Both parties are stonewalling us for the conveyance of 36 million acres of land. Both parties benefit from a really poor fisheries management council that isn't responsive to Alaskans. And so we're really going to take that to the bank, and we're going to force the Republicans and the Democrats to answer for these things. But I'll tell you, man, like any other libertarian that's probably been on your show and elsewhere, the two parties don't want to get into a debate with us. They
Uh,
just don't.
no, I think they're going to lose on every avenue of bullshit that they project.
They do. They do. And so it's not advantageous for them to come against us. So what we've really tried to do is force them. So we've got these things called outdoor shows. They're like conventions for sports nuts, right? And I'm going to Comic-Con, and no one else is there. It's just me and Sean Thorne, my battle buddy down in Anchorage, who's running for the Senate. And we're forcing them to show up to these locations because they're never going to show up. Are you kidding me? These are suit and tie guys. They're not hardworking knuckle draggers like me and Sean.
Well, Chris,
So
I actually asked libertarians, are you going to show up and use your opponent's money against them by showing up to their events and talking to their constituents, not even announcing yourself, just be like, hey, can I talk to you for a little bit? Yada yada yada. Oh, that guy up there, I'm his opponent. Maybe you want to vote for me because I'm not dictating to you. I'm actually on the ground.
So I've done that, and it is mildly effective. Um, I went after the Democrats first, so I went to all their campaign meetings. I went to all their like district meetings, and I really tried to, because as a libertarian, I just if you if you want to be gay and you want to be trans, go get them, Tiger. Knock yourself out. That is not the federal government's business. So knock yourself out. And that resonated really well. The problem that didn't resonate well is the fact that I think charity belongs to us, not to the federal government, but to us, the people. And when you start putting it into those contexts, the Democrat Party really was quite standoffish, right? Because then it puts the onus on them to determine where they should spend the money and not the taxes that get accumulated at the federal government level and then pursed out, in accordance with special interests. And they weren't real thrilled with that. And so that was kind of a tricky place to find myself in. And then conversely, I would say when I go to the Republicans, they want to make it all about Donald J. Trump. And there are a couple of things that I appreciate that he did. Like, I really like the fact that he told South Korea and Japan it's time for them to concern themselves about their own defense. I'm glad that he told NATO to start building up. That was fortuitous. And I'm glad that he tried to at least limit the bureaucracy in the federal government by getting rid of people who are, concrete anchors. These are basically people who are making $82,000 and can't work Outlook or can't work Excel or can't do PowerPoint. I mean, those people exist, and they're getting $82,000, and they're going to get a retirement for life. And we need to remove those people. So I appreciate those things, but they really, really wanted me to resound hard with Donald Trump, and that's just not me. I mean, I didn't vote for the guy. I voted for George Jorgensen. So and that's a double-edged sword. But I think we're starting to reach people. I mean, like I said earlier, they're really tired of the two-party system and how it's eroded their bottom dollar. All right, it's eroded future opportunities for their kids, especially here in Alaska, and
Absolutely.
they're looking for something new.
Yeah, I think that people really are. When I talk to people as far as being a libertarian, Spike Cohen addressed one of my comments on one of his YouTube videos, and I was like, "Hey, what's up with the Libertarian Party?" He's like, "You know what? People really don't know who we are," and I think there's a campaign against the Libertarian Party just for the simple fact that there's a stigmatism to the name, which automatically generates a bias or a negative context towards that word libertarian. And I think that people, once they actually start looking into the information, they can see that the public policy is for everyone. It doesn't matter who you are. When we talk about identity politics, it is for everyone. Libertarians understand that it's more of repealing laws than introducing new ones. Politicians want to always make sure that their career is guaranteed, so they have to create problems in order to solve them for the people when they've already stripped them of every single constitutional right that they actually already own. I think I lost Chris. Let's see if we can get Chris back. We'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen. Chris, you got me?
I do, buddy. I'm sorry. My phone decided I was done talking apparently. But you had mentioned that there were people um, that were confused about the name libertarian, right? We have seen that here.
Correct.
The first time I stood up in front of the Republican interior party, uh, they were like, "Oh, so you're liberal? Why would you come here?" And I'm like, "Actually, it's libertarian, and your party actually used to be part of us back in the day. It was called classical liberal, and then you guys fell off the bandwagon somewhere and decided to become more in tune with special interests, and that's sad. And I hold you accountable for that. You know? So it's been interesting. It's been real good, actually.
And being held accountable, I think, is something that people don't quite understand anymore. As a diesel technician, I'm held accountable for every action that is opposed by me, according to the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration or even the Commercial Vehicle Safety Administration, which are now two different separate entities that control the commercial truck field. So I think the government, in all actuality, has some implementation when it comes to uh, preservation of human life when the neglect is on the other person's side, and that's just another human being that maybe doesn't take care of their responsibilities from I pay too many taxes. My paycheck doesn't come home to me because I got to pay XYZ first, and then the income comes in. I think that if people can maintain their own sovereignty with their skill sets over a fiat currency, I think that people would be better off. Coming from Alaska, do you see that in an abundance versus somebody from the lower 48?
Uh, well, so I think what's kind of critical is to go back to that three districts of Alaska that I mentioned earlier, right? You got the bush, you got the
Correct.
road network, and you've got Southeast Alaska. So, in varying degrees, that is true amongst all of us. But there are some folks who truly believe that the only answer is from a top-down approach. Like I'm telling you, sir, they believe it deep down in their core, because they're kind of these people that are afraid to be responsible for their own decision-making skills. And there's quite a few here in Alaska, especially on the road network. And then
Well, you
you'll
touched a huge
find, like,
subject. Chris, can I stop you right
sure,
there? You touched a huge subject right there, is people being held accountable for their own actions. And
yeah,
I know a lot of people that have that mentality that they need to blame the person that's across the aisle versus the person that's standing in the mirror. Do you think that as the United States and as Americans, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence should be to the forefront for every individual so that they can know that the accountability always depends on the one that they're looking at the mirror versus the person across the aisle?
absolutely. But that's a tough sell. I
I
won't
know it
lie. I
is.
mean, just look at your own kids, right? I mean, as soon as they pop out, they're blaming somebody for something else, right? So, so, so you gotta really. It goes back to being polite, kind, brave, and encouraging, right? I mean, we're not going to get anywhere if 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 we're continually being the guy who's bludgeoning people to death, right? I mean, that's just not how that works. But if we can demonstrate we got to $30 trillion not because of a party, but because of two parties, or we can say, you know, the Republicans did send Chris By to Iraq, and we did spend $8 trillion there, and we did expend 8,000 plus lives there of service members and military contractors on the global war on terrorism. What did we get out of that? Are
I
we
think we
any
spent a
safer?
lot more than that there. I think we spent a lot more
Well,
than that there.
it's so Columbia. I'm sorry, Brown University does a really good piece on this, and I would encourage, you know, your podcast listeners to go and check that out. they've got an excellent piece on that. As far as a public university that takes taxpayer funds, they at least got this one right. So you can go online. It's under Brown University, and it's Global War on Terror, and it breaks all of this down in an easy to read format. They did a really good job. So I use that regularly. The other thing that I balance that with is there's an article in Politico. It was published last September, and it is basically the bureaucrats being interviewed by two pretty decent reporters. And these are the bureaucrats that made the decision to invade Iraq and what they got wrong in post 9/11. Now, I always say, those bureaucrats were handpicked by the Republican Party. Not only were they picked by the Republican Party, but those same bureaucrats changed the name and maybe the dress. They still are there with the Democrat Party, still making decisions that have poor outcomes. And yet we turn a blind eye to that every time as a voter. And so our thing here in Alaska is don't settle for the lesser of two evils. Vote your conscience. And so it's been really, really kind of interesting to talk to people about this, especially if they're hardcore Republicans or hardcore Democrats.
I'm a hardcore human being.
Exactly right.
I don't care about any of those other labels, titles, and categories, including libertarian. At the core of my being, I'm a hardcore human being.
And so that's how we advocate things here. I let the labeling fall where it falls. If they want to self-identify their own labeling, knock yourself out, Tiger. Go get them.
Right.
But I'm not a label maker. I assume you're going to make your own title and your own label. My name is Chris By, citizen legislator, not politician, right? So and I always lead with that, right? If normal people got up, we would have put DC policies and DC politicians away decades ago. But because of the amount of money involved, it's very difficult to get ahead of that. And so, all we can do is give it our best shot, row hard, row like the man, rode like a madman, and really be encouraging. I know I keep saying that, and I'm not a broken record, but it really comes down to encouraging folks to leave their typical political pathway, because there just isn't enough libertarians out there to do it on our own. So we've got to harvest those guys and gals from the Democrats, and we have to harvest them from the Republicans. And Chris, you would think that they'd be making their own argument on that. Sure.
One thing I would disagree with you is that I've interacted with people that I thought were hardcore, like Republicans. And I was like, so you want to check out this podcast? I call myself the Lunatic Libertarian. They were like, Libertarian? Well, I voted for Joe and Spike. And I'm like, really? And they were like, yeah, we wish they would have done better. I ran into this, and I'm not shitting you, Chris. I ran into this just in this past 10-day period with one of my Snap-on dealers, reps, and then another parts delivery person. And the parts delivery person just came back from Florida. And I was like, oh, he's like, oh, how's it going? I'm like, yeah, because I've been spouting libertarian shit for the past 5 years at work, and I don't care who cares to listen to it. I'm just gonna run my mouth, and if you care to listen, you're gonna listen. If you don't care to listen, you're just gonna shrug your shoulders and keep walking. So my public mic has always been to libertarian views. So, and when the Snap-on distributor was like, oh, and this is not the main owner of the company, I'm not putting them out there,
right?
But, one of the workers was like, yeah. And I was like, well, here you go, man. Check out my podcast. He was like, holy shit. And then exactly with the parts delivery guy, he was like, holy shit. And I'm like, yeah, there's a lot more libertarians out there than we really think. And when I ask you, do you think there's a stigma to the libertarian brand or that name that turns people off because of a propaganda campaign that's been instituted by the duopoly to stifle the movement?
So there is, at least here in Alaska, and I'm fighting that tooth and nail. I mean, we're in a knife fight, right?
Yeah.
As a former cavalry scout, I fear no man. No. That's just how I've been bred, right? And so when it comes to those kind of knife fights, I think their records really speak for themselves. $30 trillion. The Patriot Act, 20 years of war. And the list is pretty long, right? I mean, again, for Alaska-centric stuff, we're still waiting on 36 million acres to be conveyed to us. We were made a state in 1959. We had a dude there for almost 50 years, and we couldn't figure out how to get the state of New York put back into the hands of Alaskans. I mean, come on. I mean, that's beyond just stonewalling and foot dragging. That is purposeful. That's purposeful. And so, yeah, there is definitely a stigma when it comes to that. And when you start bringing those things out, the first thing they answer with is, well, you're just a pot smoker. And I'm like,
Yeah.
well, no, actually, I'm not a pot smoker. In fact, I don't even drink. Like, I drink ginger beer and root beer. Like, that's what I do. I spend all my money on fishing stuff. So I don't really have that to lay around. And oh, by the way, what taxes don't take, my family gets. So that's
Exactly.
kind of how we roll. So, we fight that pretty hard. The nice thing is Alaska is only 720,000 people. And I've been here since 03. And so, we've made a small name for ourselves because they know that Chris By is all about volunteer work. They know that I'm a coach. They know that I volunteer for small arms training with little ones. They know that I've coached and mentored all kinds of different sports and groups. And so it's really hard for them to kind of combat the pot smoking libertarian when everybody knows me, So that's what I would say. If you got anybody listening today and they're like, how do I make a difference? How do I change that pot smoking libertarian image? I would say get involved locally with everything you can, whether it's going to the VFW, picking up garbage, even if it's just like shoveling the driveway next to you, because we do that too. But actually getting after it and working hard with your neighbors is just, not only is it rewarding for you, but it gets your name out as a libertarian. Because as a libertarian, that's our job, right? Charity is our job. It's not the government's job. It's our job. And so you just got to wrestle it back and put some sweat equity into it and really get after it. And so, for those people who are listening, that's what we did. And I'm a brand new libertarian. When I mean brand new, I mean brand spanking new.
Awesome.
Like, I didn't know I was a libertarian until, well, I'll give you the story, right? I got to Iraq. I did a re-enlistment. This was in 05. Yeah.
Yep.
No war stories.
Here it
I
comes.
promise.
Okay,
But I did this re-enlistment, and under the re-enlistment, there's this part that says, I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States from all enemies, foreign and domestic. And I remember going on a patrol later that day and looking at the faces of those Iraqis. I'm telling you, man, they are no threat to the Constitution. None. Zero. I mean, they farm rocks. I mean, they're back at least a good 100 years, maybe 120 years behind us, and just about everything except for maybe cell phones and mopeds. Other than those two things, like, that's about the extent of their system. And then I remember a young lieutenant, and I wish I could remember his name, but I remember him standing up, and at the time I was pretty demeaning. And if he's listening today, I offer a sincere apology. But I remember being pretty demeaning to this young man, being a coward, not going to Iraq. And now that I'm older and I've seen the reverse side of Iraq and Afghanistan, that young lieutenant was probably the bravest young man I've ever met. Ever. And I've met a bunch. I mean, I've been in the Army. I've seen young men do some amazing things. But when you stand up to the government machine and simply say this is wrong,
yeah,
and no one, no one came to that guy's rescue. I mean, I didn't. And if you want to know a meat eater, you're talking to one. And I didn't see it for what it was. And that young lieutenant was spot on right, 100% right. And I know a lot of vets today that if we could shake that young man's hand, we probably would. I know I would. And the same would be true for Afghanistan, where we gave countless millions away to warlords by night and police chiefs by day. And we didn't bring any freedom or liberty to those people.
They didn't want it.
And It's more than they didn't want it. They wouldn't know what. Well,
they didn't care about.
It's more than just that.
They didn't care about it.
It's way more than that.
Yeah, they cared about their own individual.
No, it's more than that. It's more than that. And I've spent many months in Afghanistan. The concept of freedom and liberty are unknown. You might as well be talking Chinese. I mean, the concept is so foreign to them that it just wouldn't translate. It would be like us watching The Matrix. I mean, it's a bunch of ones and zeros. I can't see crap. But that's basically what it was like.
Yeah.
And, the ones that were smart were on our side and sucked us dry for every dollar they could get. And the ones that weren't smart got trampled by the ones that were smart. And that's kind of how it worked out. And we just needed to do a better job of making sure the battles we pick are worth fighting. And I would say Afghanistan and Iraq were not worth fighting, not even the least. And this is from a guy who for a living killed people. And I just think we could do it better now. And I think the libertarian idea of removing ourselves from some of these issues, like Ukraine, makes the most sense. Now, am I saying leave Ukraine to the wolves? No, I'm not. But, I work at a retail shop here, and when Ukraine kicked off, there was 100 people buying all kinds of things on their own as citizens of America to send to Ukraine. So we didn't need Boeing, and we didn't need Lockheed, and we didn't need L3, and we didn't need Colt, we didn't need FMC, and all the people who are about to make a crap ton of money off of the arms sales. We had local citizens doing it on their own. And we could replicate that anywhere in America or anywhere in the world we wanted to.
We could do it right now.
So, absolutely. And there's a lot of questions about, do we send lethal aid to Ukraine? Yeah, we probably need to have a little bit of lethal aid, maybe a little, right?
No, because
should we send humanitarian aid?
No, there's mutually assured destruction, because when you look at the act that actually took Ukraine's nuclear weapons away from them, Russia and the United States said they were going to back the sovereignty of Ukraine.
That's right.
And
that was James Baker.
Right, but NATO was pushing, and they said they wouldn't. Here we are. That was what, 94 or shit.
That was James Baker in 93, 94. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so we've come almost 30 years from then, and
yes.
Where are we at? We're at where politicians have done the same thing that they always do. They back out on their fucking promises. We have a conflict between nations that they wouldn't be nations if the Soviet Union actually won. I don't really know how to say that Russia's doing wrong and sorry.
Oh no, dude, they're absolutely doing wrong. They're absolutely doing wrong. I'll say it for you. You cannot launch cruise missiles into populated cities. Like, you just don't do that. That is wrong. Now, our response to that is pretty stupid, because we had a very poor energy policy. We have nothing to provide to the world except for bombs and humanitarian aid. Like, that is our own doing, not by Chris by any stretch of imagination, but by our current administration. If we'd have had the administration of the last, and again, I'm not his fan, but we were exporting energy, and now we cannot. And we would have had a leverage to make this thing go away a lot sooner. But again, because of poor planning on both sides of the aisle, we're stuck in this mess. And, some of it we're going to have to clean up. It's like the debt. Libertarians didn't make that $30 trillion of debt, but if we don't get libertarians in there soon, it's going to be $60 trillion or $400 trillion. And so at some moment, we're going to have to roll up our sleeves, stop calling it a swamp. It's a cesspool. It's a clogged toilet. We send libertarians in there who are knuckle draggers. We wear our hip boots. We put on big orange gloves. We take up a what do they call those things? A toilet declogger and a snake, and we push a plunger. Thank you. We push that plunger in. We run the snake through it. We flush the toilet, we call it good, and then we walk around and we tell everybody that's how you fix problems. We don't pansy foot around, we just go and fix them. And we don't need, up here we have this thing about research. We've spent trillions of dollars on research up here and with nothing to show for it. Generally speaking, if you're going to do research, you're assuming that there's going to be a conclusion. Hopefully, it's not more regulations. Generally, that's what happens with the federal government. But there are things we can do without those regulations. I'll give you some for instances up here. We have this thing called the North Pacific Fisheries Management Council. And it's basically all the waters around Alaska from 3 miles out from the coast to 200 miles out. For some reason, Oregon and Washington have seats on that council. But people inside Alaska only have 2 seats. So those seats go to, obviously, industry. Not because that's what we want, but that's because that's what the governor has put on that board. Because he knows that the fishing industry ensures that he gets reelected. That's just kind of how it works. Why we've got Oregon and Washington on there is a total industry political move. It services nobody. They've already outfished their local regional locations. That would be the Pacific Fisheries Management Council. That includes California, Oregon, and Washington, and the federal government. Why they would export these individuals to control our fisheries management is beyond me, but that's how it is. So what we don't have on that council is people like Eagle, Galena, Fort Yukon. These are towns that are way upriver on the Yukon, but depend on salmon to come up so they can feed their family. Those people aren't represented on the North Pacific Fisheries Management Council. They're not even considered. And so what I want to do is I want to get rid of Washington and Oregon. They have their own councils. They can jack up their own fisheries. Put the people from the upper Yukon or the upper Kuskokwim, those are big rivers in Alaska, or the Tanana River, put them on that council, because at the end of the day, they're the ones that are suffering for lack of fish. And so that's kind of how we work it. And the same would be true for a myriad of other things. I mean, if you look at any government board, you're going to see industry is heavily involved in those boards. And it doesn't matter if it's COVID medicine board from the FDA, or if it's the CDC board, or if it's the National Traffic Safety Board, or if it's fishery management boards. Yeah, they all have heavy industry influence, and we need to remove that. We need to remove that. And there's easy ways to do that.
Chris, I got a hypothetical for you, and I know libertarians hate hypotheticals, but what if you were to start from scratch and get rid of all commercial fishing in Alaska as it sits right now, and then you were to say, okay, well, we're gonna give you the ability to sell your assets for whatever we can get out of them, whether it's the steel, the engines, whatever. We're done commercial fishing, because we understand that the commodity does not meet the environmental. It wouldn't meet the environmental standards that should be, because with human beings, and from an environmental perspective, we need to take those assets and go out and clean all the plastics out of the ocean first. Let's fish for plastic instead of fishing for salmon and crab and cod and everything else. If you can do it as an individual, it's not a commercial thing. One individual is not going to catch 10 million pounds of crab in a season, or I'm over exaggerating, but I'm just trying to make my point is that,
right.
Do you think that if we were to eliminate every single fishing boat in Alaska right now, just get rid of all commercial fishing and allow a treaty to be signed with Russia for the same amount of ocean space that in which they fish in their lands, and say, hey, we need to stop this. And this is getting beyond ridiculous. Let's fish for plastic to earn the right to go fish for our other commodities. And then let it be the trade-off.
I'll help you out. That's an easy one. I would not be in favor of that. That would be like me telling you that you can't work on diesel engines.
Correct.
That's the equivalent.
I want to finish my point. The thing is that, do you think the environmental factors of the plastics in the oceans and the overfishing, do you think that is going to be sustainable in the next 5-10 years, as far as for the people that rely on those salmon as tribalmen or tribal women?
So it's not quite cut and dry like that.
Okay.
That's
Explain
that's an oversimplification of the issue. So, and this is really important for like a lot of libertarians, especially those in Alaska. We cannot wreck the house of cards simply because we want to. It's got to be dismantled piece by piece so that we don't cause a catastrophic failure and then have like straight chaos, because that's what it would cause. The fishing industry in Alaska provides something like 30% of all food, all seafood to the globe. 30%. That 30% translates to a roughly 38% of income in Alaska. So that would be like telling all of the farmers in Wisconsin that they can't grow corn and beans combined. That's what that's like.
We're actually trying to get the farmers not to grow corn and beans anymore in Wisconsin. We're trying to get rid of commercial farming. As far as what I'm trying to do, the thing is that behind it is because you're more detrimental to the environment as far as isolated ecosystems when you're talking about mass production. And then the soil erosion and the improper nutrients that go back into the soil and everything else, it's not sustainable. But that's my particular argument. And that's the thing behind it.
So from a farm family, I would say no one takes care of land better than farmers, period. And this is coming from a farm family. They farm in Nebraska, and they don't want runoff of any nutrients, because that means that's nutrients that they spent money on that didn't go to crop manufacturer. And so they're pretty, like, it's pretty ingenious how they're doing business, at least in Nebraska. I mean, it is like by the gram with a GPS by the millimeter. I mean, that's kind of how they do business there, because they don't want any excess to run off, because that's money that gets pissed down the drain. So they're against that. And the same would be true for commercial fishing in Alaska. I don't know any commercial fisherman who doesn't want to pass on this lifestyle to other people. Now, is it unsustainable currently? Yes, I would say it is. And we've got plenty of evidence that supports that. So are there ways that we can fix this? Yes. We need to put Alaskans on that stinking board so that people who don't have to answer to Galena, Fort Yukon, the upriver people have someone they have to answer to, because right now they don't answer to anybody like that. They only answer to Pike's Landing, right? Or Pike's where
the money is. It's where the money is, right?
Right. And so we've got to sort of make a switch or a change where we operate on balance and not on 100% growth. And that's really, really hard for commercial industries of any nature, right? Because we're basically telling them that their shareholders are just going to get steady state income unless they raise the prices. So and again, I'm really weary and leery of any federal regulations for just about anything, because just about any federal regulations that come out have second and third order effects that aren't realized by the manufacturer of those regulations. And so I'm really leery of that. I think a free market answer makes the most sense, but there's some problems with that, right? There is no real good free market answer. And I'm sure there's some Mises people that are listening in on us, but there really isn't any good federal, there's no good free market answer for the environment.
No.
And I know there's probably dudes like ripping their hairs out, right? They're saying it's the tragedy of the commons. Okay. Fish migrate. Newsflash, right? Fish migrate. And so you can't own a portion of the ocean and think it's going to be okay. That's not how that works. They migrate out to about the 150-mile mark. They spend 6 years there, and then they migrate back up the river. So that's kind of how salmon work. So you've got to work a balance in that makes sense. And quite frankly, if there's no local authority, local control, and local accountability, you're never going to reach that balance, because people in DC don't understand how people in Alaska live. Like, they have no concept that the Bai family eats 2.5 salmon every 4 days. Like, they just don't understand that concept. And so, and I'm just I'm not even a guy who lives in the bush where they're eating salmon like you eat chicken, like you eat beef. It's in every meal they eat. And so they don't understand that. And so when they make these unique decisions in DC, they are totally oblivious to the local control and local accountability ends of this. So there's no balance. So what we've got to do is kind of like scrunch things down so that the key players have a seat at the table and can help make decisions at the local level. So, I mean, it's a tall order, right? I mean, we're basically telling government that they need to take about a 70% pay cut because we don't need them anymore, because decisions will be made at the state level, as it probably should have been, right?
Chris, I got a question for you. So you're elected to your seat. What is your 10-day strategic plan for implementing the policies that you want passed? Who are you going to talk to? Who are you going to negotiate with? And then who are you going to talk to on the ground to come and talk to these people in Washington and say, hey, I have a testimony from this individual. She's not in person, but here she is. Here's her video stream. I have a testimonial from XYZ. I have a testimonial from this tribe. I have a testimonial from these people. You are desecrating the land that they they cherish. What are you going to do to help them?
Sure. This is actually a pretty easy one, right? So there's a couple key components to my campaign. First, we need to pass the balanced budget amendment. Like, hands down, we just have to do it, because at this moment, both powers to be, the duopoly, is determining how they're going to spend the fruits of our labor. Right now, they're determining that. Correct. As if they haven't already figured this out beforehand. So we've got to come up with a way that removes the fuel to the gas pedal, right? And that is the balanced budget amendment. And then we start working on removing portions of that as we go. So, and the other one, right, fisheries management, that's really high up on my list. And then the next one would be the control of land management and natural resource development in Alaska. So those are the big three for me. So the way I'm going to do this, the first like 10 days, is I'm going to actually spend it in Alaska. And I'm going to build a team of both Republicans, Democrats, libertarians, mostly libertarians, church-going folk, non-church-going folk, pro-life, pro-choice, pro-industry, non-pro-industry, and we're going to make a team, because at the end of the day, it has to be about balance. And the only way we're going to get that is if I have a table that's big enough for everybody. And I'm, you know what, like I told you earlier, dude, I've already been shot at and blown up in the Army. Like, I don't fear a differing policy, and I don't fear a different, decision-making pathway. What I fear is the inability to communicate that and then come to a consensus. And so those 10 days are going to be spent in Alaska building that team so that we can get after those top three things, right? Balanced budget amendment, natural resource development, and the ownership of that, and then fisheries management. And it's going to take some serious rowing. So at DC, what am I going to have to do? Well, I've got to be on the natural resource committee. Like, that's a given. And that's going to be kind of hard to do, because you can assume the Republicans and the Democrats are going to try to box me out, but they've got to put me somewhere. And so wherever they put me, I am just going to revert right back to natural resource development, balanced budget amendment, and fisheries management. Because at the end of the day, all three of those things have to do with just about everything the government does. If I can't feed people, that's natural resource. That's fisheries management in Alaska. If I don't have jobs, that's natural resource development. That's fisheries council. If I don't have the ability to keep my fruits of labor, that's all of the above, right? So that's how we're going to get after it. It seems kind of oversimplification, I know, but that's literally what we're going to do, because I think sometimes we make things more complex than they need to be. And so I'm all about, the Army taught me something really handy, and that is to destroy things. Like, I'm really good at blowing things up. And we're really good at that. And so what we do is we define the weakness, we exploit that weakness, and then we drive it home. And if I got to fix bayonets and stab them in the throat, then that's what we do.
Yeah.
But, I'm hoping it doesn't come to that. My thought process is, because I'm going to have such a big table with so many different people on it, that I'm going to find the right tool to screw that nut or bolt in. And that's kind of how we roll. In Alaska, we've got all kinds of people, and they all need to be represented. And this kind of goes back to most libertarians' thoughts, right? When I get elected, I am not just serving the Libertarian Party, right? I'm serving all Alaskans. I'm a representative for everybody. That includes the Republicans, that includes the Democrats, that includes people that didn't vote for me. And so that's really key. And that's why my table's got to be big. That's why it's going to take me 10 days to put it all together, right? I mean, this isn't something you can just dream up overnight and shake a wand and get the right person.
Chris,
So
do you think
that's what we're going to do.
If you approach people just under the standard of being a human being, get rid of all the other labels, titles, and categories. Forget Native people, forget industrialists, forget the state, forget anybody. If you address everybody as a human being, do you think that more problems could be resolved just by the simple argument not being able to exist? Because you can't hide behind those identities.
They won't.
Other than being, well, I know they won't, but I'm just saying.
Because only you and I. No, because only you and I see that, and probably some of the people listening to your podcast. If you go to a high school or a college cafeteria, you're going to find little groups of like people everywhere.
Well, that's fine.
That's just how it is. That's human nature. They are going to label themselves as they see fit. And it doesn't matter whether or not you and I agree with that label.
Did it matter?
It just doesn't matter.
The fact that you were both a part of the same company or the same squad or on the same patrol. It didn't matter what.
But there's a difference there, right?
That's what I'm getting.
We volunteered for that crucible. We volunteered for that.
Right. I'm getting to that. It's the volunteer that says that I'm going to raise my hand to the Constitution of the United States that says that I'm going to fight all enemies, foreign and domestic. I'm the person that wants to contribute to my economy, no matter if the fiat currency or if it's a trade and barter system or it's a trust system. It doesn't matter to me. I'm the person that gives a fuck about everybody so that they can prosper, because I believe in my mind that we have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness according to our human entity. It doesn't matter what color you are, doesn't matter what God you practice or pray to, it doesn't matter any of that. It doesn't even matter what language you speak, because even individuals that don't speak the same language understand in a life and death situation that it's you and I versus this.
No, I'll give you a good for instance why.
Okay.
Just yesterday on NPR, I listened to a story about 2 states that don't allow you to pump your own gas. Literally, there's a law that prevents you from pumping your own gas. Like somebody thought this was a good idea. And so in Oregon and in New Jersey, you can't pump your own gas. Well, in Western and Eastern Oregon, those people told their government to pound sand and pump their own gas. But there's actual laws, and they're debating whether or not this law makes sense. Are you kidding me? It costs you 23 extra cents. Oh, hold on. It costs you 23 extra cents to have someone pump your gas. And there are actual honest people in New Jersey who are okay with that. So if you're a gas station owner and you don't want to pay the extra 23 cents, but you're forced to by the state to have someone pump somebody's gas, you don't have that say so. You just don't, because there are people in that state who think that's a good idea. And so you've got to shake your head and be like, okay, even if I removed all labels, there's some knucklehead out there who seriously thinks that there needs to be a law that forces a corporation or a company to have no self-service.
Yeah,
and those people exist.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from. We have about 60 seconds, so I'm going to leave with this. Chris, do you think that human beings, if we implement libertarian policy in government, into society, in 100 years, do you think that the Libertarian Party would have a need to exist? We got about 45 seconds. Let me know what you can say.
Yeah, sure. Yes, it'll still need to exist, because there's always going to be someone who wants to take advantage of somebody else. And there are sheep out there that'll just sit by and watch it happen. They'll just sit by and watch it happen. And so as long as you've got someone who says, no, your freedom and liberty are priceless, vote like it, don't settle for the lesser of two evils, you're always going to need a libertarian party. You're going to need someone who puts freedom and liberty ahead of party. And that's us. Like that's us to a T, right? Don't take
Yes.
people's stuff and don't hurt people, right? And throw in the nap while you're at there, non-aggression policy. And we're going to need people like us who are willing to stand up, even with all our differences. I mean, I'm a pro-life guy, and my most of my dudes are all pro-choice. But I've seen enough death. I mean, I've held a lady until she expired with her infant, and in like that changes a man. Like
Yep.
deep
Your
down inside,
experience
like
will
it's
change
visceral.
you. Your
So
experiences
so
will
yes,
change
but
you.
that's what I like about the Libertarian Party. We're big enough to accept differing opinions, but still understand freedom and liberty are priceless.
Yep.
And that again is why I'm a libertarian.
And I'm the
So
guy
there you
that
go.
would sit in the back of the room and look at a bully intimidate somebody and wait for the first blow to be thrown and then just walk across the room and that
And take care of it,
situation
right?
and then walk back and finish my drink and then go home
And
or
sleep
do
well at
whatever.
night.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So what I would say is please have your audience check out my website and go onto my Facebook page. It's AK Chris or Chris Spy for Congress, I think. I don't know. I'm not a Facebook guy, but I really I hate to be that politician, that citizen legislator, but the largest mountain in Alaska used to be Denali, and it's currently the amount of money being amassed against people like me and Sean. Because they know we libertarians aren't like that. We don't care about the money. We care about the message and we care about the
Yes.
relationship being built. But I've got to meet these guys that are my opponents. I've got to meet them somewhere. My opponent is fear, and fear is a costly son of a bitch. And to change people from fear to encouragement costs money. So I'm not asking for donations, but what I would encourage you to do is spread my name around, spread my website around. And if you see something on that website that looks dumb, dear God, don't let me walk around naked. Tell me so I can fix it, right? And then the same would be true for Facebook. Please pass my Facebook around. I'm horrible at Facebook. If Shannon's listening, she's probably laughing right now, but I'm not a Zuckerberg fan. I can't stand it. So I only get on there when she tells me to. But please pass it around, right? Because the algorithm is built. The algorithm is being built. And if I'm not playing on it and no one else is passing my name around, then I'm not part of the algorithm.
Exactly.
And that's a
And if
detriment
you're
to
a
our party.
libertarian listening to this and you support this man, or you don't support him because you're in the Libertarian Party and you pay your dues, he's a libertarian candidate that sounds pretty fucking awesome to me. Maybe you want to hit the like button, subscribe, the share, hit the Facebook, hit the Twitter, hit the Instagram, anywhere you want to share it. This man's got some messages that people, I think that when you don't have the experiences that he has, you don't know where that messaging comes from. And it comes from an experience that I think most people wouldn't want to have anyway. I got to get out of here. YouTube's going to ban me and do all kinds of crazy shit. I just got this started. We're at 1 hour and 3 minutes. I want to keep it at an hour so I don't get Facebook banned. They were generous enough to say, hey, Chris Bye is going to be on here. I almost said fucking Bird again. Chris Bye for Alaska, U.S. representative.
That's right.
It's me. And he's the only one that's going to be there. Just remember that. Vote for him because he's been there. He's got the life experience to make sure that everything's good to go. Chris,
well, gents and folks, I really appreciate it. Thanks, man, for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Hit the like, subscribe button. Hit me up, Chris, if you want to be on the show again. I really appreciate it. And okay. I'm going to be at my state convention. The Lunatic Libertarian will be there. Kelsey Lyons Designs did everything as far as the logo that you see up here in that corner. Oh, I'm backwards. I'm dyslexic by trade. I still can't get my finger pointed the right direction. The Lunatic Libertarian Design, Kelsey Lyons Designs. She's got me some sweet cards. They will send you directly to this YouTube stream, this YouTube channel. If you have it, the Lunatic Libertarian. These things are awesome. I will pass these out everywhere. I'm going to hit my Walmart tomorrow and hit every windshield, just like the people did back in 1991 with those old flyers to get concerts going. I really appreciate you, sir. I appreciate your service to this country. I appreciate your dedication to the Constitution of the United States. I wish you well as you're in your campaign. And I am the Lunatic Libertarian. That was Chris Bye. I finally got his name right. And we are out. Peace.